What happens when, despite a parent's best efforts, the children just don't turn out good? How responsible are the parents for that? So what's that got to do with our sugya and Avodah Zarah? We'll see. It's so interesting in understanding a different approach between Rashi and the Rosh. We'll get a view on that. A tree and its branches, Gid'o ופסלו לשם Avodah Zarah, Avodah Zarah Daf Mem Chet Amud Aleph. We have a Mishnah. And the Mishnah says, Shalosh Asherot Hein. An Asherah is a tree which is worshipped for Avodah Zarah, and it's mentioned specifically in the Torah. There are three different categories of Asherah, says the Mishnah. Ilan sheneta'o mitchila l'shem avodat kochavim harezu asura. The first category, the primary category, is a tree that has been planted for the purpose of idol worship. That's also, you can't have any benefit from such a tree, unless, as Rashi says, unless a non-Jew then annuls it, as we've discussed, that a non-Jew himself, an idol worshipper himself, can nullify the tree, but without that, the tree is forbidden. That's case number one. The second case is Gid'o ופסלו לשם עבודת כוכבים. There was an ordinary tree that wasn't planted for that purpose at all. And he trims it. He cuts off the branches, he prunes it, until he's just left with a trunk. With the idea that the tree would now produce new branches, and his intention was the new branches and fruit, whatever the tree produces, would be for Avodah Zarah. In such a case, notel ma shehichlif, he must take away that which has been produced by the tree, and the rest of the tree is okay. Says Rashi, he does this in order to serve the branches that this tree will from now on produce. So it's all fresh, all the old branches are gone, and all the fresh branches and any fruit that comes will be for Avodah Zarah. V'hu kfar haya natua, but it's already planted, k'sheba Yisrael not memene, when the Jew comes to use it. Says the Gemara, we have a case of Rabbi Yanai. Omar debei Rabbi Yanai, the school of Rabbi Yanai said, V'hu shehivrich v'rikiv begufo shel ilan. This is talking only if he actually does something more than merely trim the tree, but he actually grafts something into the tree, or he takes a branch of the tree and he replants the branch. It says the Gemara, V'hanan Gid'o ופסלו tznan. But that's not what our Mishnah says. Our Mishnah says it's enough just if he trims the tree. That's enough for the new branches to be Avodah Zarah. So the Gemara readjusts what Rabbi Yanai must mean, because that's true. The debate Rabbi Yanai couldn't be talking about a case of the same case as the Mishnah, but he's talking about the afal gav dehivrich v'rikiv begufo shel ilan. Even though he's actually grafted a new tree into this tree, and so he's really changed the tree. It's not the same tree anymore. Or he's taken a branch of the tree and bent it back into the earth to replant it. Ki natal ma shehechlif shapir dami. As long as he removes the new branches, that's sufficient. And the trunk remains mutar. The trunk is never contaminated with the Avodah Zarah. He actually has to remove. So this tree is producing Avodah Zarah branches. The branches that this tree produces now are Avodah Zarah, because that was his, although he didn't say anything about the branches after they were produced, but since he trimmed the tree down to the trunk, and the tree now produces new branches, those new branches are Avodah Zarah. And then the Gemara explains it. So what does it tell us? What's so new about that? I might have thought that I understand that if you just trim the tree, then the trunk remains uncontaminated. But if you actually graft something into the tree, then the whole tree is contaminated, including the trunk. Velitza, and it should be asur. So the debate Rabbi Yanai, the school of Rabbi Yanai, teaches us that the litza kula kamash malan, no, it's not, that the trunk still remains uncontaminated. What's important is in Rashi, where Rashi says that he uses this tree, or he intends the branches for avodat kochavim, letzorech avod kochavim, la'avod hagidulin sheigdulu bo me'ata. His intention is to serve those branches that grow on the tree from now on. So what is Rashi telling us? Why is Rashi saying that? So again, we're talking about the case, there's the tree is already in existence. Beautiful tree, lots of branches and leaves. He comes and he trims off all the branches, all you're left is with the trunk. And he says, my intention is that all the new branches and leaves and everything that is produced by this tree is for Avodah Zarah. Rashi emphasizes his intention is to serve the new growth. Says Tosfos, the Tosfos is actually on the previous Omud, although it belongs on this Omud, Gid'o ופסלו לעבודת כוכבים, and we have it in the printout, Piresh HaKundrus, Rashi explained, לעבוד בגידולין שיגדלו מעתה ושאינו עושה עבודת כוכבים, רק החידוש. He's very clear, his only intention is that the new growth should be Avodas Kochavim. He has no desire to serve the trunk. Yafeh kiven, and Rashi is right. שאם נתכוון העובד כוכבים לעקרו לעשותו לעבודות כוכבים, ודאי הכל אסור. Because if his intention was to serve the tree itself, then of course the whole thing becomes asur. Even though the tree is connected to the land, and we learned already that land itself, nature doesn't become asur, but just as if you plant a tree for Avodah Zarah, the tree becomes Avodah Zarah even though it's natural, so if you do something to a tree and intend it to be Avodah Zarah, it would become Avodah Zarah as well. That's how Rashi and Tosfos learn the Gemara. The area that is difficult, the Chazon Ish and others ask the question, when the Gemara says, in trying to understand the Bei Rabbi Yanai, I might have thought, the Mahu de Tema, Kivan de Hivrich v'Hirkiv b'gufo shel ilan ki'ilan shenetao mitchilo dami v'litzur kula. I might have thought, what are they coming to teach me, the Bei Rabbi Yanai? What's new in their message to me? What's new is, I might have thought that since they're doing an action in the trunk itself, they're grafting something into the trunk, so they're not leaving the trunk. He's not leaving the trunk untouched and saying, I'm only affecting the branches. No, you're actually grafting into the trunk. You're changing the tree. The tree is not the same tree anymore. It's now a grafted tree. I might have thought that that's enough involvement with the tree itself to convert it into Avodah Zarah, to contaminate it. So it tells you no. So what the Chazon Ish asks is, according to Rashi, what is the Havamina? Havamina means an initial assumption. When the Gemara makes an initial assumption which it later refutes, it's very important that we pause on the initial assumption and understand it well. If the refutation is so strong that you say to yourself, but what was the initial assumption? Why did we even think that? Then we haven't understood the initial assumption. So when we're learning, it's very important to place a lot of attention on the Havamina, on the initial assumption as well. So what's the initial assumption here? The man says, all I'm interested in is the branches. And he grafts it so that it will produce better branches. But all he's interested in is the branches. Ask the Chazon Ish, why would I think that the tree becomes Avodah Zarah? Why is there even such a... He's very clear, I'm not interested in the trunk. I'm only interested in the branches. The action alone is not important. You need a combination of an action and an intention. So yes, he acted on the tree, he grafted into the tree. But his intention, says Rashi, was clear. That la'avod hagidulim sheyigdelu bo me'ata. And Tosfos expands and makes it very clear that what Rashi means is, I have no interest in serving the trunk. It's only the branches I'm interested in. Why might I think that the trunk becomes contaminated? It's probably for that reason that the Rosh learns the Mishnah a little differently. And it's interesting, the Rosh we have is brought to us in the Tur. The way we have the Rosh, it's probably the Tosfos HaRosh where this comes from. It's not very clear that that's what the Rosh means. But the Tur, the Rosh's son, says, that's what my father said. So we need to accept that's what the Rosh means. So the Tur brings the Ri is Tosfos, Dafka shemefarish behedya shemechivan shelo yeh alil, mechaven shelo yeh alil, ela ma shehichlif, etc. He's very clear. All I want is the branches. I have no interest in the trunk. That's what how you learn this Gemara. But my father, the Rosh, wrote, Afilu kivein li'ikaro shel ilan, afilu hachi lo ne'esar ha'ilan kulo. No, this Mishnah could be talking even when his intention was to serve the whole tree. Still, the Bei Rabbi Yanai tells us, even though his intention was to serve the whole tree, and he acted on the tree, he grafted something into the trunk of the tree, And yes, he cut off everything else and now new growth grows. Is it only the new growth? I might have thought the whole tree becomes contaminated because he both had the intention and he acted on it. According to the Rosh, I understand. So now I understand the Havamina. I might have thought that the whole tree becomes contaminated. Comes the Debei Rabbi Yanai and says, no, that even then we go like the Mishnah says, it's only the Notel Mashi Echelif. All you have to do is take the branches away, the trunk remains uncontaminated. So we have a Machlokes Rosh and Rashi and Tosfos as to what happens when his intention is that the trunk itself should become Avodah Zarah. According to Rashi, the trunk does become Avodah Zarah because he's acting on the trunk and his intention is on the trunk. According to the Rosh, no, even then, the trunk never becomes Avodah Zarah. The trunk never becomes contaminated. So we understand it according to the Rosh. But according to Rashi, what is the Havamina? The way it comes out in the end, Rashi is clearer than the Rosh. Because what comes out in the end, that the trunk is not contaminated, and according to the Rosh, is not contaminated, even though it was his intention. That's a chidush. Even though it was intention, and he acted on it, is not contaminated. That's the chidush of the Bei Rabbi Yanai. That's a new idea. But according to Rashi, that's kind of obvious. Since he didn't even have intention to contaminate the trunk, why should the trunk become contaminated? So obvious that we don't understand the Havamina. Why does the Gemara say, I might have thought that since he's attacking the tree itself, is changing the tree itself, the tree becomes Avodah Zarah, but he said very clearly, I have no interest in the tree becoming Avodah Zarah, only in the branches. So how do we understand Rashi? And I think we have to look at a very interesting question a little bit deeper here. So you've got a tree, and the tree produces branches. The branches are now Avodah Zarah. Do we look at this as one system? And we say, you can't have the branches of Avodah Zarah and the tree, and the trunk is not. This is a tree. If it's a tree, everything should be Avodah Zarah. So Rashi seems to separate them out. The way Rashi and Tosfos learns, they're branches and there's a tree. His intention was only for the branches. If his intention is for the tree itself, then that would work. The tree and the branches are two separate. The tree is a producer and the branches are the product. And just as the fruit and the tree are different, if you've got a pile of apples and you've got an apple tree and you make the apples into Avodah Zarah, it doesn't make the tree into Avodah Zarah. So you've got trees and branches. The branches become Avodah Zarah. It doesn't make the tree Avodah Zarah, unless your intention was to do that. But just the fact that the branches are idolatrous does not automatically contaminate the tree. The tree stands separately. That's what Rashi understands. So again, if we look at in terms of the Havamina, I might have thought that the tree should be contaminated because it's all one system. No, it isn't. Unless his intention is for the trunk of the tree isn't contaminated. So I thought of looking at this, and you try and understand this. You've got the trunk of the tree. The trunk of the tree produces branches. The branches become idolatrous. How responsible is the trunk of the tree? How much does this change the trunk? Do you say, you know what, if the branches are idolatrous, the trunk produced the branches. You can't separate this out. Or do we say, no, these are two separate things. The branches didn't become idolatrous because of the trunk. Had the trunk started off idolatrous, then the branches it produced would have been Avodah Zarah as well. But the trunk's a good kosher tree. It's the man who made the branches Avodah Zarah, not the tree. And I thought to myself, when a parent raises children, and we have the same issue. A parent has to do everything they can to raise the children well, to raise the children with good values, with emunah and bitochen, with observance of the Torah, to be good Jewish people, connected to the Torah and to Am Yisrael. A parent has to do everything they can to do that. But there are other forces in the world. What happens if the other forces are responsible for the children going off? And the children, what does that say about the parents? The way we come out, according to Rashi, it says nothing about the parents. It's a sad thing. It didn't work out. And I've told some of you the story of when I was very close to Reb Meir Soloveitchik, the son of the Briskerov, who died not that many years ago, and I spent a lot of time with him. And once I asked him about what is the secret for raising good children? What are the elements? He said, only davening. Nothing else guarantees, only davening. And then he had a little wink in his eye. He was a very mischievous person. You could access the mischievous side Rameir, and he kind of is. I noticed something's going on. He said, "Come with me," and he took me out of the door, out of the apartment, and he said, "Put your ear to the keyhole of my neighbor." Well, what's going on? Okay, so no, do it. I put my ear. He says, "What do you hear?" I said, "They're swearing at each other. They're yelling. They're screaming. Terrible language. Why must I listen to this?" He said, "Their children are unbelievable Yoreh Shemayim, and they're Talmidei Chachomim. One's in Ponevezh, one's in Brisk. They're unbelievable Talmidei Chachomim. It's their children." And I've got another neighbor who is an unbelievable Talmid Chacham and a big Yoreh Shemayim, and his children aren't from. So it has nothing to do with the parents. Yes, of course, the parents have to try and they have to do whatever they can, and at the end of the day, you can only daven that it works, because there are other forces in the world. You can have a trunk which is kosher, you can have a trunk which is not Avodah Zarah. And a man comes along and he says, "I'm going to make all the branches Avodah Zarah." That's an outside force. The trunk didn't do that. The trunk was a kosher trunk. Now all the branches are Avodah Zarah. But the trunk itself doesn't become Avodah Zarah. If the man says, "And the trunk should also be Avodah Zarah," now the whole family is converted to Avodah Zarah. Yes, you can say the parents were responsible for that. But if the parents remain online, the trunk remains kosher. It's just the branches that become Avodah Zarah. One has to be able to look at them separately and say, the trunk did the best it could. What can you do? Some idol worshiper came along and he contaminated the branches. That wasn't the work of the parents. And parents need to know that there are these forces in the world that can contaminate children. And so the parents' role is not only to raise the children, but in our crazy world, more than ever before, part of the parents' role is to insulate their children. Unfortunately, it would be great if we didn't have to insulate. It would be great if we could say to our children, "Don't explore the world and explore what's online and do whatever you want." So that's not fair to a child because of the forces that there are in the world. So somehow we have to create, I'm not saying insulate a child completely from the world, but somehow create protection barriers and slowly teach the child how to deal with these other forces, because there could be a force that comes and contaminates. And as healthy as the trunk is, as good as the parents are, the forces in the world contaminate a child. The schools the child goes to, the universities the child goes to, the friends the child goes to, the things the child is exposed to, all of these things can contaminate. And we need to do all we can as parents, as influencers, grandparents, to try and help the children be able to choose not only a way that is right, but an environment that enables the way that is right.